against you. And if you examine those three situations, you'll understand that FDR and Warburg did it the old-fashioned way, with the distractions of war and economic hardship as they picked our pockets behind the scenes. So I ask you this. If not a single federal judge protested when they came forth in secret and informed them that law was being replaced by equity so that a corporate government could enforce commercial crimes against the state under the color of the admiralty law venue, working through legal fictions with mocking names of the real people without constitutional protections, and not one judge protested, do you think there's a chance that the strategy, the same strategy, might work, but this time on behalf of returning law and morality back to the institutions of government? Well, that's how the Restore America plan will work. We do not seek, nor will we disturb the great sleeping hordes of American humanity rendered nearly unconscious after 77 years of cultural amnesia. They will continue about their lives, distracted by the wars and economic hardships and their electronic devices that have been orchestrated for them by our predecessors. We will avoid all public pronouncements to the hopelessly deluded public media. As much as you'd love to get out there and sing the praises of freedom, there will be none among the members who join the Restore America plan, because we know that media will subject us. I know better than anyone. I was a part of it. They will subject us to ridicule as right-wing nutjobs and Christian fundamentalists and all the other knee-jerk evils that they use as lightning rods to gather the people in hysteria towards their own enslavement. Now, doesn't that make sense? Why would we use a strategy that will doom us to failure when a strategy has been laid out by brilliant, if demonic, men that replace the entire lawful society of the Republic excuse me, with a military-run democracy designed to confiscate your wealth and pass it along as a tariff to foreign banking families? We will make no attempt to re-educate a public that doesn't even know that the United States is a corporation, even though the signs of constitutional deprivation are all around them, on the deeds that call them tenants on their own land, on the bank signature cards that call them U.S. persons for the mere act of placing their money into safekeeping, on the government forms that confess they are subjects to the government created by their forefathers, on the government forms, a bank signature card that makes them swear under penalty of perjury everything is true. The mere act of signing that places them in jeopardy for investigation, arraignment, incarceration, and ruination of their lives. We recognize, the founders, the authors of this plan recognize, that we cannot take the general population from kindergarten to graduate school, at least not at this time, considering they were taken from graduate school to kindergarten over a slow progression of planned cultural amnesia. Which means that the Restore America plan is not grounded in ego. It's not grounded in our desires to convince people, to persuade people, to generate awareness and consciousness about freedom. It is not about making ourselves feel better by fancy proclamations. It is solely confined to achieving the results I've outlined here tonight, again, quietly, peacefully, and without risking violence, civil war, or misinterpretation during the interim installation period. Folks, the orders have already been written. The plan is laid out. We won't be able to discuss them with specificity on this far too public forum, but you can already tell by what I've said that this has been methodically worked out. So, with the Restore America plan, we are planning, just in case I haven't made this clear, to end the foreclosure nightmare, tax prosecutions, prosecutions without an injured party, and assaults on the byways of America using their own, let me correct that, using our own institutions to do the work behind the scenes, just like in 1933. Once we have reabsorbed those institutions back into de jure service. We will also be achieving diplomatic status with respect to the corporation as we put it back in the bottle. And we will modify, as I mentioned, the crime database to reflect our sovereign status. So instead of using the de jure grand juries to force our will on unsuspecting local institutions, you can imagine the havoc that would cause around the country. We will use the restored trappings of government to achieve our goals quietly. In other words, we will have reconstituted higher courts, and they will get their marching orders to hand down the appropriate writs to the lower courts to do the right job. Nonetheless, the de jure grand juries will reserve their power on the land if needed. All in all, we will not subject our adversaries to humiliation, to proclamations or insults that motivate resistance. We will not challenge their propaganda. In fact, it is their propaganda, what they have been uttering thousands of times a week on the airwaves, as if the American people's asleep, which unfortunately they are. We will use that propaganda to dismantle the evil institutions of the tree of knowledge and facilitate the reassimilation of those institutions under the tree of life. We will not punish them. It is sufficient that the Lord knows of their crimes. It's in the Lord's hands. Instead, we will invite them to join us willingly, and many will come, and we will offer them the glory for solving the foreclosure crisis and the economic meltdown. Let the politicians enjoy the limelight. We want no part of it. Let them enjoy the accolades and the fawning, because the real magnificence is reserved for the Lord, and we'll be on bended knees making sure that happens. When I refer to 1933, I know there are some out there who are thinking that we are going to be using the methods of perverse men of history, demonic men of history. But don't think for a minute that just because a demon uses a particular method that it is inherently evil. It's the man that's evil, not necessarily the method. You know, we could take a lesson, for instance, from the War College. Our War College and the war colleges of the industrialized nation learned plenty from Hitler's blitzkrieg. But when we put the strategies to work on behalf of the law of the Creator, we will be cleansing them of bad intentions. It is rational, it is reasonable, and it is logical to use their institutions under our control, brought back to the de jure side by quiet reabsorption, to right this society and prevent the progression, the inevitable progression, if we don't intervene, to World War III. So, folks, I've said a mouthful here. I didn't know if I would talk for 15 minutes or 45 minutes before I brought in our guests. And I believe we do have a couple of guests in the wings. We'll bring them in a second. For those of you who are wondering how to join what we are doing, it's very simple. If you have a pen and a piece of paper, I urge you to take down and circulate this email address far and wide. The email address is therestoreamericaplan@gmail.com. The Restore America Plan, all one word. The Restore America Plan @gmail.com. Now, if you have foreclosure and tax and prosecution problems and are willing to stand up and be counted and willing to assemble